The NHL has suspended a two-time Stanley Cup winner who is accused of assaulting his wife. Slava Voinov's ban from practices and games came just hours after his arrest in California.
Evander Kane faces accusations he's betting on his games. The accusations come from his own wife, who posted on social media that Kane is throwing games to win money.
They had it all: fame, fortune, a spot in the best hockey league on earth. But for some players, all the talent in the world isn't enough to save them from their worst enemy, themselves. From bad attitudes to shocking crimes. These are the stories of players who had a grip on greatness and threw it all away. This is every NHL player who killed their careers. In the history of the NHL, there has never been a can't-miss prospect who missed by a wider margin than Alexander Daigle. He is the ultimate cautionary tale, a player blessed with generational Hall of Fame level talent, whose career was killed not by a single incident, but by a profound and almost tragic lack of passion for the game. The hype surrounding Daigle in 1993 was immense. He was a phenom in junior hockey, a player with breathtaking speed and skill who was seen as the next great French-Canadian superstar. The expansion Ottawa Senators, desperate for a franchise savior, deliberately finished in last place to guarantee they could draft him first overall. On draft day, a supremely confident Daigle delivered one of the most infamous quotes in sports history. "I'm glad I got drafted first," he said, "because no one remembers number 2. The number 2 pick that year was Chris Pronger, a Hart Trophy winner and first ballot Hall of Famer. The Senators immediately signed Daigle to the largest rookie contract in league history at the time, 5 years for $12.25 million. The contract was so massive that it terrified the other owners and directly led the NHL to create a rookie salary cap system to prevent such a scenario from happening again. Daigle seemed more interested in the celebrity that came with his contract than the work. He embraced a lifestyle, famously posing in a nurse's uniform for a full-page ad and later launching his own cologne brand. On the ice, his numbers were decent at first, but his effort level was constantly questioned by coaches and teammates. It soon became clear that he didn't have the drive required to be an elite player. He once admitted in an interview that he didn't really want to play hockey, he just wanted to be famous. The apathy showed. He was traded from Ottawa to Philadelphia, then bounced to Tampa Bay and New York, with each team hoping they could be the ones to unlock his incredible potential. None of them could. Then in 2000, at the age of just 25, Daigle did the unthinkable. After being demoted to the minors, he abruptly retired from hockey, walking away from millions of dollars to study philosophy and start a movie production company. While he would eventually make a comeback and play several more seasons in the league, his fate was already sealed. He was the ultimate bust, a player with a $100 talent and a 10-cent work ethic, who killed his own promising career because in the end, he simply didn't care enough. Some players kill their careers with one catastrophic mistake. Sean Avery killed his career with a death by 1,000 cuts. For years, he was the NHL's premier agitator, a master of getting under his opponent's skin, but he was also a ticking time bomb of controversy, a player whose relentless need to be the center of attention eventually made him so toxic that the entire league turned its back on him for good. For a time, his act worked. He was an effective pest who could chip in with some offense, but his antics often crossed the line from annoying to just bizarre. In the 2008 playoff game, he invented a new way to infuriate a goalie. He stood in front of New Jersey's Martin Brodeur, facing him and wildly waving his hands and stick in his face to distract him. The move was so unprecedented that the NHL created a specific rule against it the very next day, forever known as the Avery Rule. But his behavior was becoming more reckless. He was fined for making an insensitive comment about an opponent who was battling cancer. Then in December of 2008 came the moment that sealed his fate. Avery, now playing for the Dallas Stars, sought out a group of reporters before a game to make a prepared and unprovoked statement about his ex-girlfriend, actress Alicia Cuthbert, who was then dating Calgary Flames defenseman Dion Phaneuf. When the cameras were rolling, Avery delivered the infamous line, "It's become a common thing in the NHL for guys to fall in love with my sloppy seconds. I don't know what that's about." The backlash was immediate and severe. NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman called the comments disgusting and suspended Avery indefinitely, a ban that was eventually set at 6 games. But the real punishment came from his own team. The Dallas Stars owner and management publicly condemned him, stating that Avery's behavior was completely unacceptable and that he would never play for their team again. He was exiled. While he would eventually end up back with the New York Rangers, his reputation was permanently destroyed. He was seen as a loose cannon, a player whose need for attention had finally become a bigger liability than his on-ice contributions were an asset. After his contract expired, no other team in the league would touch him. He didn't just annoy his opponents, he had embarrassed the entire NHL, and in doing so, he had talked himself right out of a career. But some careers aren't killed by a bad attitude or a careless quote. They're killed in a single violent moment. A flash of rage that crosses the line, leaving a permanent stain that can never be washed away. Before the incident, Todd Bertuzzi was a superstar. In the early 2000s, he was one of the most dominant power forwards in the world, a key part of the Vancouver Canucks' famous West Coast Express line alongside Marcus Naslund and Brendan Morrison. In the 2002-2003 season, he had a spectacular career year, scoring 46 goals and 97 points. He was a first-team All-Star and seemed destined for a long and celebrated career. But one moment of brutal vengeance changed everything, turning him from a beloved star into a public villain, and forever altering the course of his life and career. The story began on February 16, 2004. During a game, Colorado Avalanche rookie Steve Moore delivered a hard, open-ice hit on the Canucks captain and the league's leading scorer, Marcus Naslund. The hit, while deemed legal, caused a concussion and drew the fury of the Canucks organization. General manager Brian Burke called Moore a marginal player going after a superstar, and other Canucks players like Brad May publicly issued a bounty on Moore's head. The threat of retaliation was clear and public. On March 8, 2004, the two teams met again, and the atmosphere was toxic. With the Canucks losing badly in the third period, Bertuzzi began to stalk Moore around the ice, trying to provoke him into a fight. Moore refused to engage. Bertuzzi then took matters into his own hands. He grabbed Moore from behind, landed a vicious sucker punch to the side of his head, and then used his full body weight to drive the now unconscious Moore face first into the ice. The aftermath was horrifying. Moore lay motionless on the ice in a pool of blood with 3 fractured neck vertebrae, a concussion, and other facial injuries. His NHL career was over in an instant. The consequences for Bertuzzi were immense. The NHL suspended him indefinitely, a ban that would ultimately last for 17 months and cost him 20 NHL games. But the fallout went far beyond the league. Bertuzzi was formally charged with assault causing bodily harm, a criminal charge to which he eventually pleaded guilty. The incident also sparked a multi-million-dollar civil lawsuit that dragged on for over a decade. While Bertuzzi did eventually return to the NHL, he was a changed man. His reputation was permanently destroyed. He was met with boos and heckles in every arena he played in for the rest of his career. The incident haunted him, overshadowing everything he'd accomplished before it and everything he would do after. His career wasn't just killed, it was forever defined by a single, brutal act of revenge. For over a decade, Marty McSorley was the definition of a protector. He was one of the toughest and most feared enforcers of his era, a loyal bodyguard who followed Wayne Gretzky from Edmonton to Los Angeles, ensuring that no one ever took a run at the Great One. He was a 2-time Stanley Cup champion with the Oilers and a key part of the team's dynasty. He had a long, successful, and respected career as one of the game's ultimate policemen. And then, in a single, ugly moment, he threw it all away. The incident took place on February 21, 2000. McSorley was playing for the Boston Bruins in a game against the Vancouver Canucks. In the final seconds of the game, a scuffle had broken out. McSorley engaged with Canucks tough guy Donald Brashear, but instead of dropping the gloves, McSorley did the unthinkable. He skated up from behind Brashear and swung his stick like an axe, hitting him directly on the side of the head. Brashear fell backwards, his head hitting the ice hard. He suffered a severe concussion. The act was so blatant and so violent that it was immediately condemned by everyone in the hockey world. McSorley was ejected from the game and suspended by the NHL. That suspension was eventually set for 1 full year. At 37 years old, it was effectively a lifetime ban that ended his career. Like the Bertuzzi incident, the consequences went beyond the league's punishment. McSorley was charged with assault with a weapon. His trial became a high-profile event, and he was ultimately found guilty and sentenced to 18 months of probation. The incident was a complete betrayal of the enforcer's code that McSorley had lived by for his entire career. He wasn't protecting a teammate or answering a challenge. It was a vicious, illegal act against an unsuspecting opponent. Despite winning 2 Stanley Cups and playing over 900 games, his legacy was permanently tarnished. His long and storied career was killed in an instant by a single, reckless swing of his stick, a moment that he will unfortunately always be remembered for. But some of the most tragic career deaths happen far away from the bright lights of the arena. They're the stories of players who, after reaching the highest peaks of the sport, lose it all to off-ice struggles and unforgivable decisions. This is one of the most tragic and stunning falls from grace in modern hockey history. For a time, Mike Richards wasn't just a good player. He was an elite player, a winner, and the kind of warrior every team dreams of having. He was on a clear Hall of Fame trajectory, a player who had won everything. And then, in the blink of an eye, it was all gone. At his peak, Richards was the complete package. He was the captain of the Philadelphia Flyers, a Selke Trophy finalist as the league's best defensive forward, and a player who could score 30 goals and 80 points. He was a leader on the international stage, winning an Olympic gold medal with Team Canada in 2010. After being traded to the Los Angeles Kings, he became a core piece of their leadership group, a gritty, fearless presence who helped them win 2 Stanley Cups in 2012 and 2014. He was a champion, a respected leader, and one of the toughest competitors in the game. But after the second championship, his on-ice performance began to decline sharply. Rumors began to circulate about his off-ice partying and a potential lack of a commitment. But the hockey world was still shocked by what happened next. In June of 2015, during the offseason, Richards was stopped while crossing the U.S.-Canada border and was arrested by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police for possession of a controlled substance, which was reported to be oxycodone. The incident was the final straw for the Kings organization. Just a few days later, in a move that sent shockwaves through the league, the team placed Richards on unconditional waivers for the purpose of terminating his massive 12-year, $69 million contract, citing a material breach. This was a rare and drastic step, almost unheard of for a player of his stature and accomplishments. It was a clear signal that the team viewed his off-ice conduct as a serious and unforgivable violation. The contract termination led to a long and complicated grievance process with the NHL Players Association, which was eventually settled. While Richards would go on to play a handful of games for the Washington Capitals a year later, his career as an impact player was over. His story is a heartbreaking cautionary tale of a player who had reached the absolute summit of the sport. A beloved champion who seemed to have it all, whose career was suddenly and shockingly cut short by his off-ice demons. While Mike Richards' career death was a tragic downfall, Slava Voinov's was a swift and permanent exile. It's a clear and unambiguous case of a player in the prime of his career who killed his future in the NHL with a single, unforgivable off-ice crime. On the ice, Slava Voinov was a huge part of a championship dynasty. He was a skilled, puck-moving top 4 defenseman for the Los Angeles Kings, a key contributor to their 2 Stanley Cup championships in 2012 and 2014. At just 24 years old, he had already won 2 championships and seemed destined for a long and successful career as a premier defenseman in the league. He had everything ahead of him. Then, on October 20th, 2014, his career and life changed forever. Voinov was arrested and charged with felony domestic violence. The details of the incident were disturbing, and the NHL acted immediately, suspending him indefinitely from the league just hours after his arrest. The legal process played out over the next several months. Voinov eventually pleaded no contest to a reduced misdemeanor charge and was sentenced to 90 days in jail. After serving his time, he was taken into custody by immigration officials. And facing deportation, he voluntarily decided to return to his native Russia, where he would resume his hockey career in the KHL. For years, his NHL future remained in limbo, but in 2019, he made a formal attempt to return. He applied to the league for reinstatement, hoping that enough time had passed for a team to give him a second chance. NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman made the league's stance perfectly clear. He lifted Voinov's suspension, only to immediately issue a new one, banning him for the entire 2019-2020 season for his off-ice conduct. The NHL Players Association appealed the decision on Voinov's behalf, but the suspension was ultimately upheld by an independent arbitrator. The message from the league was final and absolute. There would be no second chances. Slava Voinov's NHL career was officially and permanently over, a direct result of his off-ice crime. He was a 2-time Stanley Cup champion with years of prime hockey ahead of him, but his actions made his persona non grata, in exile from the league with no path back. But a career can be killed by more than just a bad decision or loss of control. Sometimes, a player's career ends in a story so bizarre, so shocking, it sounds like something out of a Hollywood movie. This is, without a doubt, one of the most bizarre and disturbing stories in the history of the National Hockey League. It's a case where a player's career was not just killed, but completely obliterated by a murder-for-hire plot that was rooted in years of psychological manipulation and control. Mike Danton was a scrappy, hard-working forward who was drafted in the 5th round and had carved out a role for himself as an agitator with the St. Louis Blues. He was known for his grit and his willingness to do anything to stay in the league. But off the ice, Danton was living in a state of turmoil. By his own admission, he was exhibiting signs of severe mental instability. He felt like a 23-year-old infant, unable to make his own decisions, and was completely under the influence of his controversial agent and former junior coach, David Frost. Frost was a notorious figure who had been accused of being abusive and over-controlling with his young players. The story reached its shocking climax in April of 2004, just days after the Blues had been eliminated from the playoffs. Danton was arrested by the FBI at an airport in San Jose and charged with conspiracy to commit murder for hire. The details of the plot were almost too strange to be believed. Prosecutors revealed that Danton had attempted to hire a hitman to kill a man. The bizarre twist was that the man Danton hired was in fact a police dispatcher who immediately alerted the authorities. The even stranger twist was the identity of the intended target. Danton claimed that he had been in a state of paranoia, believing that this man was coming to his apartment to kill him over a debt. and he had to act first. Prosecutors contended that the man Danton wanted dead was his own agent, David Frost. The case was a national headline, a story of a twisted, toxic relationship that had spiraled into a shocking criminal plot. Facing a lengthy prison sentence, Danton eventually reached a plea deal and was sentenced to 7.5 years in federal prison. The judge in his case perfectly summarized the situation, stating, "In over 18 years on the bench, I have never been faced with a case as bizarre as this one." Danton's NHL career was of course over, but his story took another strange turn after his release from prison. He enrolled in St. Mary's University in Halifax, Nova Scotia, where he studied psychology, achieved a near-perfect 4.0 GPA, and even played for the school's varsity hockey team. In one of the most incredible quotes in sports history, Danton later said, "I know this is going to sound nuts, but I'm glad I went to prison because the negative downward spiral that would have happened would have been 10 times worse." It was a strange and shocking end to one of the most infamous career self-destructions the league has ever seen. Our final player is a unique case. He is a man who has done more to kill his own career than almost anyone else on the list. A player whose time in the league has been a constant series of self-inflicted wounds, controversies, and scandals. But he is also a player whose on-ice talent is so undeniable that he has managed to come back from the dead again and again. This is the story of Evander Kane, the man of 1,000 chances. From the very beginning of his career, there were signs of trouble. His time in Winnipeg ended in 2015 after the infamous tracksuit incident, where his violation of team rules and a clash with veteran teammates like Dustin Byfuglien made him a pariah in his own locker room, forcing a trade. But it was his time in San Jose where his career truly imploded. After signing a massive 7-year, $49 million contract, his off-ice life became a circus of controversy. He filed for bankruptcy, citing millions of dollars in gambling debts. He went through a public and messy divorce that included serious allegations of domestic abuse and of him betting on his own games, an accusation the NHL investigated and cleared him of. Then came the final straw. Kane was suspended for 21 games by the league for submitting a fake COVID-19 vaccination card. While he was serving that suspension, the San Jose Sharks had seen enough. They terminated his contract for a breach of team and league protocols, a move that seemingly killed his career for good. He was seen as too toxic, too much of a liability for any other team to take a chance on. But then, the Edmonton Oilers, desperate for scoring and toughness, decided to take that chance. They signed him to a low-risk contract and he immediately paid off on the ice, becoming a key contributor and a fan favorite. Evander Kane's story is a modern cautionary tale. He is a player who has repeatedly put his own career in jeopardy through a series of poor decisions and off-ice controversies. He represents a unique case of a player who has killed his career multiple times, only to have his immense talent bring him back to life. His story is an ongoing testament to the NHL's willingness to forgive almost any transgression, as long as you can still put the puck in the net. So there you have it, the cautionary tales of the National Hockey League, from wasted talent to unforgivable crimes. These are the players who were given the keys to the kingdom and proceeded to burn the castle down. A stark reminder that in the NHL, the most dangerous opponent a player can face is sometimes themselves. So, which player do you think had the biggest fall from grace? Let us know in the comments.